So the clowns in Congress decided over a year into the fighting against ISIS to now debate whether or not to approve that fighting. So it's already frustrating right off the bat here. And the results of the debate were maddening. So two things here are fascinating. Number one, how they flipped the process on its head, which I'll explain to you in a second here. And the second thing is how they pat themselves on the back. So Huffington Post reports, they say, quote, lawmakers determined to have a war authorization debate chalked up a win on Wednesday. They forced the House of Representatives to spend a full 2 hours debating legislation that would pull U.S. troops out of Iraq and Syria if Congress doesn't authorize the ongoing military campaign against the Islamic State by the end of the year. The House rejected the bill, 139 to 288, but for those desperate to have any kind of discussion about war authorization, the debate alone was a victory. That's in the article. They say that. Quote, but for those desperate to have any kind of discussion about war authorization, the debate alone was a victory. All right, so do you understand what's happening here? The way that it's supposed to work is you have to approve a war before you go. You know, that crazy thing. You can't just do it and then a year later you're like, hey, is this okay? You're supposed to do it. Now, you do have a little bit of leeway because of the War Powers Act, which in my opinion is unconstitutional, but nonetheless, it's not viewed as such right now. So you do have a certain amount of time to approve it after you launch it for like an emergency reason, but we're well past that. We've been there for over a year, and they haven't approved it yet. And just now they're starting to debate it. So they flipped it. Remember how I said they flipped the debate on its head? Now they flipped it to, let's pretend like we already approved the war, even though you didn't, and now let's have a discussion about a deadline. Yeah, but you didn't approve the war, so how can you talk about a deadline when you skipped step 1 and you went to step 2? And the bill failed also. So understand what that means, too. If the bill failed, that means that you should pull the troops out right now. Like, they were debating a deadline for, okay, let's make it X amount of days or months or years into the future. It failed. So wait, you didn't approve the war to begin with. So since this bill failed, doesn't that mean you need to pull the troops out right now? Because you didn't approve it in the first place, and you didn't get this bill through, which does a deadline. So that means pull them out right now. But see, that's the problem. The problem is Congress no longer cares about the law, and they no longer care about the Constitution. And they applaud themselves for having a discussion about it. That's basically like me, releasing a statement on Twitter or Facebook or something saying, hey guys, I did a show today. It was a win. But I'm supposed to do that. That's my job. Why am I congratulating myself for that? That doesn't make any sense. You have to do that. They have to approve a war before they go to it. But instead they don't, and then a year later when they start discussing it, they're like, hotshots over here, doing something that we were supposed to do and we didn't do. How you like them apples? Oh my God, it's so embarrassing. Hey, you idiots, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, under the enumerated powers. I'm starting to think that none of them have read the Constitution. None of them. Because if they read that, they'd go, oh, goodness gracious. It appears as if we're supposed to approve war before we do it. And it appears as if we can't really launch a war. The president can't launch a war without us. What do you know? But understand, I can tell you the exact reason why they've balked at this. It's clear. So Obama doesn't want to have his name and his legacy attached to doing a new war in the Middle East, which is what he's doing. He's just not calling it that. So he's fine with not officially calling it a war, because then he gets to at least have a debate in the history books down the road. The experts will say, well, it wasn't an official war, and then people will be like, yeah, but we were at war. But it'll be a discussion. So it's up in the air as to whether or not Obama was a war president and launched a new war in Iraq and Syria. So he likes the fact that it hasn't been officially declared yet. And the Republicans think, well, okay, this probably isn't going to work. So let's not, put our stamp of approval on this so that when it gets fucked up, we can turn around and say, we were never on board with Obama's war in Syria and Iraq. We were never on that page. That's why you got to blame the Democrats for the for the fact that this failed, and you got to vote for us because we were never on that page. You can't prove it. Where's the documentation? We never voted for it. So it's all partisan political games, and they care more about that and saving face than they do about the Constitution, and they care more about that than they do about the process that's been set up to try to avoid a mess like we're in right now. It's really frustrating, and the founders are definitely turning over in their graves.